You see my rack? Your rack? I don't know. Oh, here it is. Every caver needs a place to store their gear. Caving can be a simple sport requiring very little equipment. There was definitely a time when all my caving gear fit in a small plastic bin that usually stayed in the trunk of my car. But times have changed and my interests have expanded, so the amount of gear has begun to multiply. I've been exiled to the utility room in the basement, which is about 80 square feet. Having a designated space for my gear, where I can go once clean so that it's ready for the next adventure, helps maximize my productivity. I'm going to give you a quick tour of the space and share some of the things that I do to help improve efficiency. Maybe some of the ideas might help you organize your own gear. Being organized helps in spending more time underground and being more productive when you're there. I spent a little time recently building shelves and reorganizing here in the basement, but I'll warn you that this video doesn't contain any actual caving, so if you're not interested in gear, or you think gear is simply a means to an end, then you may find this video to be a little boring, and you may want to skip it. For many years I was using store-bought shelving, but it wasn't very sturdy and didn't make full use of the space. So I decided to build custom shelves, and I added some lighting while I was at it. I like having a designated place to store things so that I can find what I need quickly. I prefer to keep things on open shelves or hanging them up instead of in storage bins so that it's easier to see and get at. I do use some small bins and drawers for smaller loose items like rigging hardware or other small items, but if I use bins or drawers, then I use a label maker for easy identification. I keep ice climbing, sport, trad, and big wall climbing gear here also. Some of the climbing gear does cross over into caving, and I use some of the trad and A-climbing gear underground. Of course, camping and backpacking gear is often used on weekend trips or longer expeditions. Some of the sleeping bags, sleeping pads, tarps, and water treatment, as well as stoves, are used on underground camps. And I'm a big proponent of ultra-lightweight camping, and almost all of my backpacks, tents, and sleeping bags weigh less than 2 pounds. If you've watched my review on stoves, then you'll know that I'm a big fan of Jetboil, though I do own a couple of alcohol stoves as well. For water treatment underground, I usually use Microdyne, and on the surface I use either a SteriPen or Aquamira. Along the top shelf I keep piles of cave clothing, generally separated by type. Short-sleeved and long-sleeved shirts, shorts, tights, and pants. Then on the far end is a collection of cave suits and wet gear including neoprene hoods, gloves, socks, various wetsuits, and a dry suit. I keep a collection of knee pads, elbow pads, and gloves on a lower shelf. I have cave suits made by B&C Wonderwear, Lost Creek, Meander, and AV. They each have their strengths and weaknesses, and I really don't have a favorite. I tend to favor the Meander suit for drier caves, and I like the AV suit in wet, cold caves. I may do a review on these in the future. I've been doing more and more digital cave survey, and I like to keep the various electronic devices, including Disto-X's, PDAs, phones, and tablets, charged and ready to go. So I have a USB hub with enough cables to keep everything plugged in and charged up. For analog survey, I keep survey paper, survey books, pencils, and survey pouches ready to go. I have a separate video where I talk about having pre-printed survey pages, and I typically keep survey books loaded with 2 title pages and 20 sketch and data pages, which is more than enough for a weekend of survey. I have a few clipboards and 8.5 by 11 pages for larger sketch projects, and I keep survey pouches ready to go with a book, 2 pencils, protractor, and reading glasses. I also have kits for the point person that includes a roll of flagging in a zippered pouch, a disto target, and a pair of Sharpie markers. I can just hand this to the point person and they have everything they need. For rigging and digging, I have several drills, just enough to meet basic requirements. Most are Bosch, which I plan to do a review of at some point in the near future. As with digital survey gear, I keep all the batteries charged so they're ready to go. For digging, I use the 36-volt models, and for climbing I use the 18-volt models. I also have a Ryobi gas-powered rotary hammer, which I don't use very often, but these are no longer made and hard to find. I got this mostly for digging duty, but using it underground requires good ventilation. Rigging hardware, including bolts, screws, hangers, nuts, washers, myons, and SDS bits, are kept in labeled bins so they're easy to find and grab when I have a climbing or rigging project. The lower shelf is used to store extra rope, rope pads, as well as rope cutting and labeling equipment. I'm still divided about the pros and cons of carrying ropes in caver coils versus rope bags. It usually depends on the situation, and I tend to carry anything over 150 feet in a rope bag, and shorter lengths I tend to coil and stuff in my regular cave pack if there's room. I have bins for storing microshaving and straw gear. I've considered doing tutorial videos on the use of this stuff, but there's really too much concern that it may be misused or misinterpreted from either a conservation or safety perspective. I've decided for now that the equipment, techniques, and applications are very situational, and probably the best thing is to learn from someone with experience in a direct one-on-one environment. I have a number of helmets and headlamps that I use for different types of trips. As with other battery-powered equipment, I like to keep these charged. I have a couple of carbide lamps, but I rarely find an excuse to use them. The two main lights I'm using now are a Scurrion and a Manley. I prefer the Scurrion in bigger caves and on longer trips, but I like the smaller size and light weight of the Manley for trips in caves with more crawling, such as wind or jewel caves. I've been meaning to do a helmet review for some time now. Several manufacturers, including Petzl and Black Diamond, have recently changed several of their models, which has complicated my plans. The shelf on the end has duffel bags for travel, nylon laundry bags for transporting dirty cave gear home, and bins with several repair parts for electric and carbide lights, as well as spare parts such as cord, buckles, and repair materials. The top shelf for now is a sort of staging area for ongoing projects. So for example, I'm gathering and testing different types of bolts and screw anchors that can be used for aid climbing, and I'll be doing pull strength testing on these in the near future. I keep rope coils and packs on hooks in this corner behind the door. The collection of packs is getting to be a bit much, so I'll probably start thinning them out by either donating them to a student or tossing the ones that aren't worth repairing. I do try to repair gear, which is a regular post-trip activity. My wife has a sewing room and she doesn't mind at all letting me use her high-precision machines for caving gear. She especially doesn't mind when I try to sew heavy pack fabric or webbing. Aid climbing gear that I primarily use for caving gets hung up here. That includes aid ladders, daisy chains, pitons, hooks, bolting hardware, and I have a set of slings and quick draws that I just use for climbing in caves. Below that I have SRT vertical gear, including various extra descenders and ascenders, and then full sets of gear for frogging, Mitchell, and rope walker. And yes, I absolutely need all of these descenders. The last thing I'll show you is this whiteboard, which I use on an annual basis to record trips and survey accomplishments. Unlike a lot of cavers, I don't keep a log. I've missed 30 years of trips, so I'm not going to start now. But if you're just getting into caving, it'd be nice to keep a record of how many caves you've been to, number of hours underground, vertical miles climbed, etc. Anyway, the whiteboard is a good motivational tool for me. This one is magnetic, so I can attach or hang things from it. I'm a big proponent of using checklists, and I have standardized lists that I use for camping in caves like Jewel, Fort Stanton, or Lechuguilla, and a list I use for basic day trips. Having a checklist gives me the confidence that I haven't forgot something and allows me to focus on other more important logistics. So with that, I'll wrap up the tour. If you saw anything that sparks your curiosity, just post a question in the comments. If you have suggestions or maybe want to see a more in-depth review of some of the gear you saw, then post that as well. And I promise that the next few videos will contain more actual caving.